So before we get started, Anton, tell us a little about yourself, your background, and
Okay, I started out the industry back in high school. When I went to tech school, continued on there, worked in the industry for 35 years, finished off as a aluminum structural technician for two high-end German cars, and also taught in the industry at the college nearby me for 16 years as a part-time instructor, and now I am a subject matter expert for iCar.
and yourself, John?
I've been in the industry for 42 years, working in body shops, doing all collision repair. I'm a structural technician, is basically my specialty, working with aluminum and steel. And, I'm doing mainly heavy collision work. I'm BMW and Jaguar Land Rover certified, and so I'm mainly working with German vehicles. Has been for the last 25 years.
That's great. And Chris, your shop is now, tell us a little about yourself and your shop, because you are one of the new growing certified centers that we're seeing in the DC market.
Yes, my name is Chris Burton, so I'm from Roslyn Auto Body. We are in Alexandria, Virginia, which is right outside of Washington, D.C. We've really kind of taken the path of focusing on certifications, and what the manufacturer says is the way that we move forward with it.
Nice. Well, our session today is on mixed materials. My company, RAE, actually specializes in the riveting equipment and such for the mixed materials, and we have to evolve our tooling with the way the materials are evolving in the industry. Now, John, I've been working with for a long time with your different certifications, so you've watched this whole situation evolve. And how have you kept up with it from a knowledge standpoint, or getting your information so you know what you're doing with the materials?
I always refer to the vehicle makers' website and the service information that they provide. That's where I start. I get an idea of what area I'm going to be repairing, and follow the guidelines that the vehicle maker is offering me to get that done. That's the way I determine what kind of parts I'm going to be ordering, depending on where the car's hit and what kind of materials are going to be involved, because it can be a variety.
John, I'm just curious. Have you seen the evolution of the cars, and the evolution of the information for the procedures? Is that kind of can you talk a little bit about how that's changed so much over the years?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest change is transitioning from welding, where welding was the most prevalent part of structural work, and now it's transitioned into riveting and bonding. And riveting and bonding has become, in my opinion, as far as structural work goes, the mainstay in the industry now. Manufacturers are leaning more towards it because it's using welders and welding equipment. There's places in the world where it's not as accessible, and the training is not there for the people. Even if they can get the equipment, they don't necessarily know how to use it. And by taking that out of the equation, and on top of that, I mean, it's just, I think, a better repair. When you're bonding and riveting, sectioning in structural members in a vehicle, it's an incredibly good procedure.
Now, Anton, with iCar, what do you feel is your expertise that you're bringing the most to the industry? Because as an iCar instructor, you're a very, very key component to what we need. We talk about a rivet or bonding and how we're going to get away from heat that'll cause, you know, metals to corrode, or dissimilar metals that'll be a problem from a corrosion standpoint. So with your experience, where do you feel yourself and ICAR is bringing this down to a different level?
Well, proper training, I've always felt proper training to survive in this industry is key. Keeping up with things. The reason I got where I was at is because I constantly educated myself on what's coming, what's new. To become a certified aluminum structural technician for a lot of these car manufacturers now is a very select group. There's very few, and I just keep going back to the reason I was picked to be an aluminum certified structural technician is because I constantly kept up on training. Training is key. The cars are constantly changing. As far as my subject matter expertise, you know, I worked in the collision industry for over 35 years. Not only did I not only did I work in the collision industry, I also taught in the collision industry. Went to training, certified structural technician. We go through a lot of training through the car manufacturer. The car manufacturer, you know, pounds into your head that you have to follow their procedure. That's the way they test it. Following proper procedure from the OEM car manufacturer is crucial nowadays, and that's why it's such a limited amount of people that they allow working on these cars, these mixed material cars, because the car manufacturers want to make sure that they're done properly. So the only way we're going to do that is for them to restrict it. They restrict it, only allow certain people to work on them to make sure we do it proper. Whenever we do a repair for these OEMs as a certified technician, we have to follow step by step their procedure. Not only once that car leaves our area, our name gets tagged to the car. The vehicle could get fixed 5 states over, and when they run that VIN number, my name will come up with my repair. So that's another reason why it's crucial that we follow strict guidelines on exactly how they want it done. That's the way they tested it. That's the way it needs to be done.
That's a good point. This I want to just ask Chris about, because as the CAFE standards change and the car is going to have much thinner, much harder steel, maybe skinned aluminum, maybe some layer between, and you hire a technician that has not been through all this training, and you talk about getting the repair procedures, but how, as the shop owner, do you get to the technician to tell him, hey, listen, stop, take a breath, this is the way we're supposed to do this?
Yeah. So for us, it's the biggest thing is culture, right? So, you know, culture is key. So we want to make sure that the person is a good fit, even if they don't have an experience with it. We want to make sure that we get to a point where they want to learn, right? They not because they have to. They're not being forced to be trained. They want to learn, they want to grow, and they want to know more knowledge.
So with that now, so you have the technician, he wants to grow, he wants to learn, you've printed the repair procedure from, say, or the guideline from OEM One Stop, and now you go to the technician and you're like, excuse me, but this is the way it's supposed to be done, and in our facility, we only go by manufacturer's guideline. Do you feel you get a resistance from the technician to learn, or they're just excited to say, yeah, I got to change my ways? You know, I'm an old dog, but I can be taught new tricks.
Yeah, I think, well, if you ask my father will tell you, hey, man, it's a lot easier than it was, you know, back when I started, because now you have the instructions of how to do it. So I don't know why you guys are complaining. Just follow what you got in front of you.
Nice. So with your classes, Anton, do you go out of your way to make sure the proper adhesive's going to be used if a guy's doing riveting, that he's really taking the time to do it the right way, he's not putting glue on and then going to lunch and hoping for the best when he comes back to finish his job?
As far as the adhesive bonding goes, the car line that I dealt with was very strict on the exact glue that we used. There are other glues out there. Using the proper glue for the proper vehicle is very important. Every glue that is out there has its place, has its purpose, but once again, following the OEM guideline for that specific vehicle is key.
John, when you talk again about these different new materials that are going to be mixed, and a technician, say, wants to put a weld on a car because he sees a weld, but yet the repair procedure says when that panel is replaced, it's going to get riveted and bonded. The weld was only done when the car was manufactured under those certain circumstances by a robot, but that can't be replicated. The replication is going to be riveting and bonding.
Yes.
How do you explain that to someone where they see it one way and you're telling them, no, when it leaves, it's going to just simply look different, but it's better?
How do you explain it? Well, I would simply say that you need to understand that what you're reading in the vehicle maker's guidelines is the correct way, and there is no secondary way. You do it the way it's laid out for you in the vehicle service guidelines, and you know, that's it. I mean, you don't deviate away from that. If it says you got to glue and rivet that section in, that's what you do. It doesn't matter what the vehicle maker had there from the factory. That's not their plan for the way that part's replaced once it gets out into the real world, and it's been compromised. Because that's the whole point. The reason this work is being done in the first place is because the vehicle's been in an accident. The member that you're taking off, whether it's a rocker panel, an engine support, a cradle, a front cradle, it's a repair procedure, so it's going to be a little bit different than what the factory did in their assembly as the thing's coming down the line.
You said a key word, this is for Chris, where you said the word plan. Because I've been in different seminars and we were looking at different electric vehicles where a technician may be tempted to simply drill a hole and put a rivet, not realizing what the heck is that drill bit going to maybe hit drilling that hole. How do you, Chris, you're going to do a job, you are an electric car certified facility. How do you plan and get it where this is our plan, this is our timeline, this is when we're going to be gluing, this is when we're going to be riveting? You can't just stop in the middle of the job and go to lunch. So how do you develop that plan?
Yeah, I mean, well, so it's repetition, right? So we approach it, very seriously, right? But we bought these nice fancy printers to make sure everything prints in color. That way we can, you can see which rivet goes where, and we mark it before that. And it's really all about the stuff we do beforehand, before we start even riveting or drilling or even touching a bolt, just to make sure that we know exactly what we need to do and what's expected of us.
And Anton, when you go to you're doing a class for a specific facility, and do you notice like they have a lack of classes they should have been taking? You're doing a class on welding, or you're doing a class, and then you notice that they've missed 4 or 5 important ICAR classes that they really should have done leading up to what you're doing, or they've let that certification lapse. Do you go out of your way to say, hey guys, listen, you're putting the cart before the horse in many instances. What you're doing right now is great, but we really need you to take these other courses? And how do you politically tell them, listen, you're where you're at?
Every student that walks through that door might be at a different level. We might have students that walk through that door that have 20 years experience in the field and are just adding to what they already know. And then we also have students that come in and are just starting out. So as far as the student goes, as long as in my eyes, as long as they're trying to do the right thing, figure out the proper procedures, take the courses, learn the knowledge. As an instructor, you always have to deal with every student individually on a different basis. It's our job to figure out where they're at, where they fit in. If we see them lacking somewhere, naturally, yes, you could point out things that they might need to know or things that might even help them. Usually a student that comes into your class, they already have that drive to learn more and get into the industry. So as far as students go, like I said, I've been teaching for 16 years now on a part-time basis, and I like doing it. It's very enjoyable, all the different people that you meet, and just to see some of the people's desire. But like I said, they're there because they want to learn, and that's always good. Every now and then you do get the students that have to be there because their place of employment requires them to be there. But once again, if you're going to do this as a job, as a career, once again, if you're a professional, you should know your job.
Hey, John, you brought up about manufacturers' procedures on the German cars.
Yes.
And as we know with Mercedes, their actual rivet has a star on it.
Yes.
To make sure you bought the proper rivet. And I know it's a major concern of the car companies that their official, approved, tested bonding, whether it's the glue or the rivet, is used. How do you get and tell your students, from your own learning, from your own repair procedures that you've looked at, that, hey, listen, you have to have the right fastener. You can't simply buy some aftermarket thing off of when it comes to a fastener, because as Anton said, his name and his numbers attached to that car in 5 different states or over a period of time.
Absolutely. And it's very simple. All rivets have part numbers. The rivet is a part the same as a quarter panel or a rocker panel. And when you're putting together your parts for that vehicle for repair, you have part numbers for the rivets, and there's specific rivets for specific points on the car. The length, the diameter, some of them are self-piercing rivets, some of them are brake stems or blind rivets, and it's very specific. It's not every section of the vehicle has a very specific rivet procedure for that joint or that section.
I think that touches on something too, right? So we can't be everything to everybody. We really got to find our specialty and what focus, and we can't fix every car, like we used to a long time ago, right?
It's true. And Chris, as a shop owner, if you're using the proper fastener, wouldn't you be purchasing that in most cases from the dealer when you're buying the parts, getting the proper glue and and this way it's all on the estimate, there's no question on what's being used?
Exactly, yeah, and it's all in one invoice. That way when you submit it to your bill payer, you say, hey, this is what it is, And that way we have like little individual toolboxes throughout the shop for every car manufacturer that we work for. So if it's, this one, there's a Mercedes box, we have a Tesla box and all so forth.
Yeah, because I had actually run into a situation a few years back where it was actually Ford asking questions about the Henrod rivet they wanted to know, how did you identify, what is the actual rivet? And I will say, back then we did look at the different rivets under spectron microscopes, and there was an incredible deviation to the substandard rivets coming out of certain parts of the world. They were cracked, and their coatings, every rivet actually has a special coating on it. And
Yep.
in a lot of cases, you might be going from metal, you might have an isolator material in between, and then you're going to aluminum.
Right.
And if you don't use the proper rivet, the car's immediately going to start corroding, just like you took a battery and threw it in the water and you pick it up and it's all rotten. I know using the proper material is key. Liability-wise, it's a must. I couldn't even imagine legally what a person could rip you apart for not using the right, fastener that's going to affect the person's safety.
And Dave, that's one of the important parts about the adhesive. The adhesive puts a coating between those mixed materials and doesn't allow for galvanic corrosion. It doesn't. It gives the rivets more strength. It fights moisture. It's just the adhesive is a huge part of the repair. When you're
Anton, with these adhesives now, for all years of experience, you've seen where a tube of adhesive is $30 and something that looks identical to it is $400. And how do you help educate the people that, all glues aren't the same?
Okay, that's a great point. The car manufacturer that I dealt with, the tube, last time I purchased the glue was $580 for one tube. There are other companies out there that make it for $45. Unfortunately, because I have to follow their guidelines, I have to use specifically what they recommend, what they require. Not even recommend. They require me to use that adhesive. Are there other adhesives out there for less money? Yes, there are. Basically, what it comes down to is when we repair these vehicles, we are repairing the structure. The structure has to act, again, in a certain way on the next collision. So the engineers have tested it with this glue. They've tested it with these rivets. This is what works. This is what they tested. Our job is to maintain the integrity of the vehicle if it's going to be involved in another collision. And we're not necessarily worried about the car. The car can be replaced. What we're worried about is the people in the people in the vehicle. So that car has to act a certain way. The collision management is distributed through the vehicle. So once again, if we're compromising it with an adhesive or with a weaker rivet, we've changed the structure of the car. That is not up to us to do. It's not up to the technician to make that decision. That is the decision of the engineers of what to use, and they're very clear on what they tested and what they want put back on their vehicles.
The manufacturer has a part number for their adhesive too. So you know that, again, when you're ordering rivets and adhesive, you're using part numbers from the manufacturer. You're getting what exactly the adhesive that the manufacturer wants you using on that particular spot.
And I think Anton really touched on it, right? So it's about the safety of the person in the car. The cost is the cost, and it's not up to us. I mean, our responsibility is to fix the car right, regardless of what it costs.
Yeah, and two things we really touched on just now. One, when you were saying the $500 for a tube of glue, and that particular repair on the rear body panel, you probably need 2 of those tubes. And there always was crazy resistance. Why is it now $1,000 just for the glue? I did one time ask the engineer on that adhesive why, and I mean, it was a 30-minute reply of the microspheres made in space and all the details. There was so much to the adhesives. But there once was a video out where a watermelon was dropped and the airbag was deployed and the watermelon simply bounces off the airbag. But when the wrong adhesive is used or the wrong rivet is used, and just a millisecond of difference, the watermelon drops and explodes into a million pieces. And that would be the driver's face or the passenger's face. So it's so important from a safety standpoint. Do it the right way. Do it by ICAR standards. Do it by the proper training. Go to OEM One Stop for the repair procedure. SCRS is an amazing organization partnered with ICAR that they all go out of their way to make the industry better and safer, make the technicians better, put us up here. You guys, from your training with ICAR and with other affiliations, this is your chance to say a 15 or 20-second plug on why you think you're making a difference. You can start with yourself, John.
Well, I think I've made a difference because I would say 90% of my career I've been in dealer and body shops, not independents. I tried to, all the work that I performed, I tried to do it how the manufacturer wanted it completed. And I learned over the years that, compromising that is not an option. You can't, because when you're talking about the glue, if you were to not use the glue that is recommended, when the vehicle's hit again, the energy transfer through the vehicle is not going to be the same. That's what you're talking about with the watermelon, right? And, I tried to pass this on to the guys that I work with in the shop, the different apprentices I work with, and try to make them understand that, the reason you're working for a dealer is because you have to, this is a manufacturer of the vehicle, and you have to lay things out the way they want them done.
That's true, and it's great that you had that background and you make a difference. And yourself, Anton?
Yeah, been trying to make a difference for a long time now. That's why I got into the teaching end of it. I like seeing the students evolve from not knowing what they're going to do to their future to having them send me a message here at SEMA and saying, "Hey, are you at SEMA? I'm here." Getting a message from one of my students. I haven't seen him in 5 years, and he just decides to send me a message, whether or not he's here. See him grow in the industry. Once again, my belief was always to teach the student the proper way to do it. Nobody will ever fire you for doing it right, but they sure will fire you for doing it wrong. So you follow the guidelines, follow the proper procedure, do the right thing. What it all comes down to, any repair that we do, especially structural, I'm just going to keep going back. It goes back to safety. We are there to protect the occupants in the vehicle. Like I said, the car can be replaced, and I've always tried to drive that into my students' head as well. There's always hurdles we have to cross in the industry on certain people allowing us to purchase the proper adhesives. Once again, it all comes back to documentation. If you can pull up a documentation for somebody that says this is what the OEM is requesting that you use, there is no argument there. When it all comes down to it, the tech that fixes the vehicle holds the liability, the shop holds the liability. Sometimes the people paying the bill are not the ones that hold the liability, and they hold no accountability. So that's one thing I always stress to my students is when it's all said and done, you're the one responsible for what happens to that car once it leaves your stall.
Chris, I've watched you doing everything the right way just grow, and your business just get simply better. What do you attribute to that, to your safety, way you run it, and the way you're trying to just simply do things better?
It kind of touches back on what I said earlier, just the culture, right? So we have a strong desire to learn. You just got to show up, right? So you got to show up. You got to want to, not because you're forced to. And I don't want guys that are kind of just going through the motions. And I want guys that are engaged or hitting me up going, "Hey man, do you see that new class on iCar's website? Hey, can I take that class?" Those are the kind of guys that you want to be around with, or gals.
Myself, with my company, we've always aligned ourselves with the companies that do everything the right way, do everything strictly by the OEM procedures. We're fortunate enough to be sitting here with iCar, which is the benchmark organization for training in our country. They simply get better. They simply make everybody better around them. They take the technicians that have done a wonderful job, and when they want to retire or do something better in their future, they're here, like these gentlemen. And again, I can't stress enough that SCRS, which is the Society of Collision Repair Specialists, are partnered here. They're a great company. We want people to just simply walk up to them or any member and say, "Hey, what are you all about?" They'll be happy to share their message and see about making you better as well as the industry. And thanks again for this opportunity.